booster. Okay, I am so happy that so many of you could be here for this special event. I think, as many of you know, it is not every day that we are able to celebrate a new endowed chair in a college. It's a pretty special and significant thing when you can add an endowed chair, endowed professor position within a college. So, we are here to recognize and begin to celebrate this new endowed chair, the Daniel D. Tessoni Chair in Accounting. So let me just tell you, I'll just say a few remarks about Dan, and then I'm going to have Jeff Davis speak for a few minutes. So Dan Tessoni has been with us in this college for 40 years. That was supposed to be something nice that I said. He's been teaching, he's been impacting student lives, he's been impacting our alums, educating and mentoring our students and our alumni. I think, as many of you know, he is a one-of-a-kind professor who's often been described as one of the best, one of the most memorable. He is also, as some of you know, deeply respected by corporate leaders. And this is what has been so impressive to me as I've learned over the past year. I knew that he was a good teacher. I had him come and speak in some of my engineering classes. But the respect he has in the Rochester community from business leaders is very impressive. People want Dan on their boards. People want Dan helping them with their companies because of the extensive experience and knowledge that he has. And so that's been very impressive to me. So, including our namesake, Phil Saunders. And so Mr. Saunders decided that he wanted this legacy that Dan has created over the past 40 years to be recognized and honored. And so Phil launched this initiative to have an endowed chair in Dan's name. And he put forth a leadership gift to start this initiative. But what's been so amazing to me is how many other people have stepped forward in support of funding this endowed chair. I have to say that Dan has to be one of the easiest people to raise money for. But it's because of this legacy that he's created. And so when you go and you talk to people and you ask them if they want to support this initiative, almost every one of them is absolutely, I would support this initiative. And so we've been working very hard on this over the last several years. And we've finally reached a very important milestone. And the milestone is that we've gotten to the point that we can announce this and establish this chair now. The work's not over. We'd like to continue to grow the endowment. But we've gotten to the point where we can announce it. And it's through the generosity of Mr. Saunders, but also so many business leaders and alumni that have been touched by Dan. Let me just share a few quotes from previous students. Dan offers a no-holds-barred, real-world perspective to his classes. There is no one more dedicated to his students' success. His support and encouragement helped guide my career, and I am privileged to count him as a friend and a mentor. So this chair, a few people have asked me, what is an endowed chair? And each endowed chair has a different mission. Many of them have a research mission, but this chair is different. What this chair is going to do for us is it's going to allow us to always have a guy like Dan, a dynamic professor who delivers contemporary and applied accounting curricula that's supported by meaningful experiences with business and industry. So that is kind of, in a nutshell, the mission of this particular chair. So with that, I am going to introduce Jeff Davis, who is our Associate Director of our EMBA programs. He is an alum of the EMBA program, the on-site program, Class 17, and he's going to say a few words. Jeff.
When Dana first approached me and talked to me about maybe saying a few words here, I remember thinking, wow, 40 plus years and so many people he's known, and truly they couldn't find somebody that liked him more than I did, which was fascinating to me. Honestly, there had to be somebody that appreciated what he did, but no, honestly, I want to tell you a little bit about what it was like having Dan for a teacher. So I came in here about 6 years ago, or a little more, maybe 7 years ago, and on the first day of real class, as it's been for so many of our alumni over the years, Dan walked in and began to yell at some of the students. Those that were late for class, those that hadn't given the proper effort in their online discussion, those that he didn't appreciate some of their thoughts when he said, open it up, let me hear what you got, and then rip them apart for what they said. And then he said, but understand, in this classroom, there's no place for thin skin. And that was the best learning environment I had, the best one I'd ever had to that point. We had some discussions that were very rigorous and challenging, and we were willing to stand up and take issue with things that were said, and that made the class that much more fun. Dan is the only person I've ever known, and my apologies to the rest of the accounting department, but the only person I've ever known who was able to say that made accounting fun, interesting, for those that were not accounting majors. I actually advertise that when I market the program. I often will say, how many of you are looking forward to accounting? Raise your hand. And very few hands go up. But in the end, they all appreciate what Dan gave them, and the classroom is amazing. I know I see some students out here, so if I can just get a real quick, how many hands out there are people who had Dan for a teacher? Okay, so we've got about 10 or so. Hopefully they'll agree with the things I'm saying, and I can say it pretty consistently as I meet with alumni. I hear the same things back over and over. I'll even give you one more. He was the only faculty member we had in the entire program that gave an assignment after you completed the class. So you would get to the last cycle, you would finish the last class, and then he gave you an assignment that was major, that was going to take a lot of your time over the next week, and you already had assignments for all your new classes that were due in 2 weeks, but you also had Dan's project. And it just worked out that happened to be Thanksgiving week. So I remember actually being with my family and everybody celebrating Thanksgiving, except for me. I was in the basement studying, doing work, and listening to the recorded lectures of Dan Tessoni that I'd already heard. That's part of taking Dan's class. Everybody records Dan's lecture, and they then use that over and over as they learn more about the program, and they can't take it all in during one session, so they have to replay it. I know I talk to alumni still that listen to Dan's recordings years after they've taken the program. That's hard to imagine, but it's true. The other thing about Dan was that when we had him again, so we had him for accounting in the first term, and then the last term he came back and we got to experience Executive Leader Series. And Dan brought in some of his friends, some of the people that he knew in the community around Rochester. And of course that included Mr. Saunders, and Joe Labazzo, and Dennis Mullen, and Maggie Brooks, and Giovanni Ledestri, and Jim Salzano of Clark Shoes. I can go on and on. Ron Ricotta, Century Mold, the Sands family, Kitty Van Bortel, I'm going to forget a ton, Lauren Dixon. These are people that Dan brought to speak to us. In most cases, this was to speak to a classroom of 20 to 25 people. In some cases, Mr. Golisano, who would come. I hate to say it, but the Golisano College on the other part of the campus would contact us and say, is there any way that we can talk to him while he's here? Because he would come and talk to us. Unbelievable. And the experience that provides for the program is irreplaceable. So although I hate to disagree with our new dean shortly after taking office, there will never be another Dan. The good thing is that this is in place to hopefully help us come as close as we can. I've got to tell you that we have 550 alum from the EMBA on campus and the EMBA online, which are becoming one program, as you're familiar. 550 alum. And the hardest thing that I think you could do as a faculty member is to teach that many people well and to have all of them consider you a friend. And I think Dan has done that beyond what you can even imagine. Each one of them feels a special connection to Dan because he has that unbelievable ability to make everybody feel special. to be at a meeting like he was last night, or at an event like last night, and be talking to Phil Saunders or Maggie Brooks or whoever, and stop to introduce one of his students to these people. And that's what Dan does and how he treats everybody. So I just want to say thank you to the best damn teacher I ever had. Thank you. And since I'm not last, I should introduce the next person to speak, who is, of course, as we should all know, Phil Saunders.
Well, I had many words to say last night about Dan, so I'm going to make it a little shorter today, which he'll appreciate. One reason why it'll be shorter is he talked to me the other day, looked me in the eye, and he says, don't say anything bad about me. So that alone really shortcuts the story. But a true story that Dan got a little upset with me about is about 6 years ago. He called me one day and he says, you know, I think they're going to fire me. And so rather than calling the dean, I called the president of the college. And he says, why did you do that? The dean's upset with me. Everybody's upset with me now. I said, well, that might be true, but I said, don't worry about your job. And it's hard to believe that a guy that has done so much for a school and has contributed so much to the students, that he would think that he was possibly going to get fired, because I don't think that was in anybody's thought process but Dan's. I've had the privilege of working with Dan for several years in some companies that I'm involved with: Western New York State Energy, Genesee Regional Bank, and he's also been kind enough to become a trustee of Paul Smith College that I'm the chair of. And I really asked him to be on all three of these boards for one reason. You cannot bring in a more competent guy in the field of auditing, finance, financial statements, year-end audits, working with the auditing firms, negotiating new contracts with them, so on and so forth. And he's tough, to the point, knows his business, and he can get away with being tough, because when you know your business, you can be tough. And he does that very well. One of the greatest things that I think Dan has done is he has got 2 scholarship funds here at the business school for students. And I don't know if you're all aware of that, those are students or not, but he's put in almost, it's $49,700. And as I told him last night, you'd think for an accountant you would have figured a way, or $49,900. And I said, you'd think you'd have figured a way to get in another $100 to make it $50. But I don't know how many professors, and maybe there's more than I know of, that have actually contributed their own money and started scholarship funds for their students. But I think it does go on to say how much Dan really loves his students. And that's another one of the reasons why I enjoy him, is he's always talking about his students, and which will make some of you not too happy in this room. He says, I hate tenure. And he says that's pleasing to some, but not to all. And he doesn't like writing papers and things like that. He just loves being with his students. And when you really sort it all out, I think that is probably the most important thing for a professor. And as I go around the country and I bump into people that have been through the school here, this is very true. I'll say, who is your most memorable teacher? And if they happen to be in one of Tessoni's classes, he's always one of the people they immediately mention. And sometimes when they don't, they say, well, we didn't have him for a teacher. And I say, well, that's your loss, because he's a great teacher. So I think that's enough said, and I think the chair is a great thing for Dan. I don't know how many contributors we've had in total to it, but I would guess it's over 50 or 60, which it's more than that. So which gives you an idea of the breadth of support that people have for this thing. It wasn't 3 people like myself just stepping up and putting in all the money. This was a whole bunch of people, which I think makes it a more valuable chair, and it is really the first chair for the business school. I guess there's a couple other non-funded chairs or something I've heard about, but a chair that doesn't have a fund behind it, to me, isn't a chair. So at any rate, thanks for this little get-together today. It's nice being with the faculty and some of the students here. And then on the way in, I ran into Randy, the janitor, in the hallway. And, you know, even the janitor loves the school. He says, this is my house, and I keep it clean, which makes you really feel good about a person like that with a great personality. And he lives for this place, which is good when it goes all the way down through the whole facility that you got people like that. And I'm sure Dan knows Randy too. Yeah, okay. So are you going to say a few words today, or? I believe I am. Okay, well, I guess it's time now.
I'm going to look like I have some prepared comments, but they're just blank sheets. Okay. First of all, Jackie, thank you for the nice, kind words. Jeff, I have a change of grade for you. I have several of them, actually, so be careful. They don't always go up. And, of course, Phil, thank you for being here today. We're so fortunate to have you as part of our family, and we're going to continue this for as long as possible. Whoever fills this chair will know who the founder was, so thank you very much. I just have a few comments. As I said last night, maybe 10 minutes, but I didn't include any crying time. So look, if you start crying, I'll wait for you, all right? Phil, you know, you mentioned how much Marty and I have given over the years. It's really not a significant amount until you realize it's 4 times my annual salary. So then it has some real meaning behind it. I had several people last night come up to me with envelopes saying that I was retiring. I'm like, not quite yet. It's coming. But I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, everyone in this room has contributed in some way to my being up here. I'm especially grateful to the staff who toil in this college day after day while I come in and out from the warm climates of Naples, Florida. So thank you all. We've all been together for a long time, and you've all been magnificently supportive of me and kind to me and friendly, and I so appreciate that. I don't remember being fired, although it did happen a few times, I'm sure, but the exit door was swinging. I'll never forget that. Dean Rao, for those of you who were there, called me. He's like, next time your friend wants to talk to somebody, don't have him call the president, have him call me. And I'm like, Ash, it's not my fault, all right? All right. I want to say a few words about the chair and very few words about my history here in the RIT environment. Okay, ready? I started at RIT on July 1st, Monday, I'll never forget it, 1974. So I don't know how many of you were born then, but probably very few of you. I started in the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, where I taught for 3 years, full-time, all hearing-impaired students. And believe me, these kind words that come from so many people about my teaching, that was the foundation. I was very, very influenced by a mentor and an icon in the deaf community, Robert Panera, who recently passed away. But he told me during my early days that no matter how long I did this, how many years, how many students, how many classes, that I always should remember that whoever I was teaching, it was the first time for them, and I should act like it was the first time for me. And that always, always stood as tremendous advice to me. Obviously, there are not too many things, I won't mention what any of them would be, that you do for 40 years that you maintain the same enthusiasm as you did the first time. But that's my MO. When I go into that classroom, whatever else is bothering me stays at the door. And those students are my focal point. So it's really helped me get to this point. I've been asked by many people what an endowed chair means. I don't know, but I'm about to find out, I think. I assume it means a big pay raise. What? All right, well, we're going to find some use of those funds. I'm going to share with you a brief part of the statement of intent that Phil and I developed in support of this chair, and I quote from that statement: "The endowment will provide financial support for an accounting faculty member in the Saunders College of Business at RIT. The individual holding the chair will be a dynamic professor with significant experience in business as well as appropriate academic qualifications. The holder of the chair will focus on teaching and on developing meaningful relationships with the accounting and business community. The individual holding the chair will be expected to engage with students and with the RIT community, our business partners and alumni, to the benefit of the Saunders College of Business at RIT." It was important to both Phil and I that the person have a strong business background, and it is extremely important to me that the holder of the chair be an outstanding teacher. As you all know, RIT has a long, rich history of valuing outstanding teaching, and this chair will contribute significantly to the continuation of that tradition. I want to thank you all for being here. By the way, given what you look like, I'm expecting a standing ovation here. I was going to ask you all to sit down, but I don't know what you would have done, but I hope it's coming. All right, I want to thank you all. I'm really overwhelmed and honored and humbled by this recognition, and I owe a great deal of gratitude to all of you as members of this family of the Saunders College of Business. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So Dan, once again, congratulations, not just for this honor, but really for the legacy that you've built, particularly with our students and our alumni and the Rochester business community. So congratulations. I also would like to just thank Dana Pierce. Where's Dana? Is Dana here? Dana has, as she always does, planned and managed perfectly 3 events in the last 24 hours. So it's incredible that she's still standing, but she does it with grace, and she does it well. So thank you, Dana.